They called me low class at my own son's wedding, and they said it while standing on a floor I paid for. That was the first cut, quick and clean. The second was slower, watching a planner I'd hired glide past me like I was a chair, not a father. 2 sentences, and you know the blood's already in the water. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from, because you might know this kind of room, the kind that decides who you are before you open your mouth. It was April 17, 2025, a Thursday tasting on East Bay Street in Charleston. Spring light through tall windows, peonies sweating perfume, crab cakes lined up like soldiers. I wore the same navy blazer I've had since Ethan's college graduation. The room didn't know that Blazer had seen tuition checks clear and 1 mortgage refinance fall our way. It only knew labels. Ava, my son's fiancée, tilted her head at my sleeves, smiled to her aunt and said, "Airy as a linen napkin, he's sweet, but a little low class. And bless him." Her words placed me beneath the silverware. I could have let it pass. I'm 62, a retired home inspector. I've stood under roofs that sagged worse than a man's pride. But the program in her hand, she shifted it away when I reached. "Vendors only," she said like I was there to bus tables. My jaw clicked. Somewhere behind me a timer dinged in the kitchen, bright and final. I paid the deposit, I reminded myself. $18,300. My checks, my winter insulation jobs, my pension made of small, honest pieces. I'd initialed an AV addendum on April 15th that put any shows, slides, or audio cues under my control. Not because I wanted a spotlight, because I know the truth behaves in light. Ethan texted, "Dad, please play nice. I love my son. He's a good man, 28. Wrote code that paid for a decent apartment and a used Tacoma he keeps cleaner than his fridge." I typed back, "Proud of you." Deleted the rest. At the bar, Uncle Richard told the same Yale crew story to 2 different clusters of guests, word for word, down to the laugh on the last line. Actors learn their beats like that. Maybe I'm paranoid, I thought. Then I saw it. A folded slip near the planner's clipboard, the corner of a number peeking out like a shy fish. I slid it into my palm as if I were adjusting my cuff. $2,800, family talent, it read. No letterhead. A Venmo handle scrawled in blue ink. I didn't need to be a detective to feel my spine go cold. I needed to be what I've always been, a man who reads the grain in wood and the lies in budgets. Ava's mother, Colleen, cut across the room, perfume like sugared lemons and threat. "We'll need the father's mic muted during toasts," she said to the planner, pointedly not looking at me. The planner nodded. I smiled. The AV key was in my pocket. On my way out, a jeweler's clerk from King Street, hired to clean the heirloom, whispered as she wiped a stone that winked too loud under fluorescent light. "This exact setting rents for the weekend if anyone asks." She slid me a card, quick as a magician. The sun was lowering over the battery when I stepped onto the sidewalk. My city smelled like brine and jasmine and something burning on a grill. "Low class," Ava had said. I tucked the $2,800 invoice into my wallet beside a photo of Ethan in a Little League uniform and felt something settle inside me. Not rage, exactly. Purpose. Money leaves tracks. I would follow them, 1 receipt at a time, all the way to the aisle. Charleston sleeps early in April, but that night the city felt wide awake and watching me. I drove across the Ravenel Bridge, the bay black as spilled ink, headlights stretching like regrets in a mirror. The taste of Ava's words still sat in my throat, low class. I'd heard worse in my years crawling through attics and under porches, but not from the woman who was about to join my family. The dashboard clock blinked 9:47 p.m. I counted the hours until dawn like someone counting debts. That check for $18,300 had cleared 2 weeks earlier, money I'd meant for insulation on my own house before summer. Every time I thought of that number, it sounded like nails being driven into my own retirement. When I reached home, the porch light flickered once before holding steady. My house smelled faintly of pine cleaner and old coffee, the scent of a life built without anyone's help. I poured a half glass of bourbon, I didn't plan to finish, and sat at the kitchen table. The laminate surface was scratched from years of small repairs. Ethan's science project, late bills, grocery lists. Now it held one thing. That folded $2,800 invoice for family talent. I smoothed the paper flat, tracing the numbers with my thumb. Whoever printed it had no letterhead, no logo. Just a Venmo handle. Whitmore Social. I underlined the date, April 17th, 2025. Same day she said it. Same day I stopped being blind. The clock ticked toward midnight. I thought of my wife, gone 7 years now, how she used to say, "Money leaves tracks, but pride leaves scars." I wondered what she'd think of me now, half drunk, nursing a bruise that had more to do with love than insult. At 12:23 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new email from the DJ company, balance due $1,150. The subject line read, "Urgent payment needed." But why was I copied? Because the AV addendum listed me as the main contact. That single line in the contract, my wife would have said, was fate disguised as paperwork. I opened my safe, the one hidden behind the utility panel. Inside sat the house deed, her watch, and the insurance binder, my entire safety net. I stared at them and whispered, "Don't worry, love. I'm not letting them take this from us." My voice cracked on the last word. Around 2 a.m., I went out back, sat on the old porch swing, and let the night talk. The crickets were steady, but my pulse wasn't. Every time the swing creaked, I saw Ava's smirk, Colleen's perfume cloud, the planner nodding like an obedient soldier. And Ethan, my boy, standing there, trying to please everyone but himself. I thought about calling him right then, telling him everything I'd seen, the invoice, the whispers, the odd call time. But what father wants to be the villain of his own son's joy? Instead, I typed and deleted 3 messages. "Be careful. They're lying. Check her family." In the end, I just sent, "Proud of you. Sleep well." The next morning, sunlight hit the kitchen window like an accusation. My coffee tasted weak, like it pitied me. The envelope still sat there. I slipped the invoice inside an old inspection folder, the kind I used to carry when I worked houses along James Island. Labeled it with a pencil, "Whitmore Wedding, Receipts. Old habits die clean." At 10:32 a.m., I drove by the venue. The hall manager was outside adjusting a delivery schedule. I asked him about the AV booth, who'd hold the key. He said, "You, Mr. Parker, you signed the addendum." He handed me a small brass key on a ring tag labeled AV02, initialed 415. That was the first real breath I'd taken in 24 hours. It wasn't much, but it was leverage, the kind of leverage honest men never think they'll need. That night, I sat by the window again. Across the street, my neighbor's sprinkler hissed in even arcs, soft and $2,800, I said. Venmo handle, no company, no tax ID. Marla didn't need convincing after that. "I can notarize witness statements if anyone talks," she said. "You'll need proof, real proof." That's when she mentioned her old friend Darius, a private investigator who used to pull background checks for a church fraud case. "If someone's hiring fake relatives," she said, "Darius will find the receipts." We met him that same afternoon. He looked like every tired man who's seen too much, salt in his beard, sunglasses that hid a history. We sat on a weathered bench near the pier. The gulls screamed overhead, but Darius didn't flinch. He studied the invoice, then my AV addendum copy. "You got leverage," he said, tapping the paper. "That booth key? That's control of the narrative," I nodded. "You think it's really actors?" "Depends," he said. "People who live off appearances leave trails. Casting boards, rental cars, fake resumes. I'll check." By noon, he'd called a friend at a small agency site, Low Country Casting LLC. When he turned his phone to show me the cached listing, my stomach dropped. Wedding background, affluent family vibe dates, May 2 to 3. 2025 Charleston, SC day rate, $300. Non-union next to it were thumbnail photos. Headshots of a man with a perfect smile, one I recognized instantly. "That's Uncle Richard," I said. Darius swiped to the next. "Aunt Elise," he whistled low. Whole production. The ocean wind picked up, carrying the smell of salt and betrayal. I called Gabe that evening, an old friend of Ethan's from high school who'd gone freelance as a videographer. He'd filmed every football game my son ever played. "You still got your camera gear?" I asked. "Always," he said. "Why?" I need someone to film the rehearsal dinner. Not official coverage, just background shots, faces, conversations. Gabe hesitated. You trying to catch something? Trying to document something, I said. You'll understand later. He agreed, as long as I covered his gas and brought his favorite barbecue from Rodney Scott's. And Dad, he added softly, Ethan's a good guy. Just maybe blinded. That night, I drove downtown to King Street. Ava had bragged about her family heirloom ring, a stone, that had been in her line since Savannah was settled. I stepped into the jeweler's shop she'd mentioned, Collier's. The clerk recognized the design instantly. This one? He asked, pulling up a tablet image. We rent that exact setting for $340 over weekends. Cubic zirconia, same cut. Who rented it recently? I asked. He hesitated, glancing at the date. Yesterday morning. Pick up May 2, return May 5. I thanked him and left with his card. Evidence didn't shout. It whispered. And right now, it was whispering fraud. Back home, I laid everything on the kitchen table. The $2,800 invoice, the cashed casting call, the jeweler's rental record, the AV key. I made copies, labeled them in pencil. The folder grew thick, proof by proof, like a heartbeat gaining rhythm. At 10:41 p.m., I called Marla. You still got your notary seal handy? Always, she said. If this goes the way I think it will, I told her, we'll need sworn statements by May 3rd. She paused. You're planning something. Not revenge, I said quietly. Restoration. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the marsh, soft and promising. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew when and where. The truth was going to speak in the same hall they'd tried to silence me, and when it did, the lights would already be mine to control. The sky over Charleston turned the color of old brass on May 2nd, the day before the wedding. The air was sticky, restless, like the city knew something was about to break. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I was thinking about structure. Every con has joints and seams, and if you press the right one, the whole facade caves in. By then, I had my team, Marla the paralegal, Darius the investigator, and Gabe with his cameras. We weren't plotting anything illegal, just precise documentation. I wanted truth caught in light, nothing more. The rehearsal dinner was at a riverside restaurant that looked like old money. Copper chandeliers, live jazz, waiters who called everyone sir. I arrived early to check the slideshow setup, which was half true. The AV key sat heavy in my pocket, tagged AV02, initials 415, my quiet badge of control. By 7 p.m., the room hummed with small talk and champagne. I took a seat near the wall where I could watch everyone. And that's when Uncle Richard started his routine again. The same Yale crew story I'd heard 2 weeks ago, down to the pause before the punchline. Gabe's lens caught it all, one clean shot from across the room. It was like watching an actor recite lines he didn't believe anymore. At 8:40, the florist found me by the bar, frustration written all over her face. Mr. Parker, she whispered, Colleen's card declined twice for $6,420. Can you reach her? I wrote the amount down in my notebook. Proof stacked best when numbered. Colleen swept in moments later, the smell of lemon perfume announcing her before her voice did. She smiled like a politician and handed the florist a new card. Technical error, she said, flashing teeth that didn't match the warmth of her tone. Of course, the florist murmured, but her eyes flicked to me, silently thanking me for being witness. Back at my table, I glanced at the hotel's family rooming list I'd pulled earlier through Darius. 7 names, 3 different last names, cash payments, no matching addresses. The cracks in their illusion widened with every detail. At 9 more, my phone buzzed. A text from Darius Turo reservation Black Escalade. Pick up May 2, 9 a.m. under R. Halverson. Same guy as Uncle Richard. Badun 19, I looked across the room. Uncle Richard was sipping bourbon and adjusting cufflinks like he'd earned them. Then came the line that sealed everything. As the waiters cleared dessert, I overheard Aunt Elise whisper to another guest, Call time tomorrow is 11 a.m. Make sure your dress is steamed. Not arrival. Call time. Gabe caught the audio from a public patio outside, clear as church bells. I'd seen enough. Before leaving, I approached the venue manager, a kind man with tired eyes. "I'll be running a short slideshow after the first toast tomorrow," I said casually. "Just family photos." "You already have my addendum," he nodded. "Yes, Mr. Parker, booth's yours." That was the lever, quiet, signed, legal. Everything would go through me. The very system they'd tried to lock me out of would be the one to unmask them. At 10:15 back home, I checked my folder. The pieces were all there now. Invoice, 2800s, family talent casting listing, Low Country Casting LLC. What she didn't know was that simplicity is how you win. No hacking, no sabotage. Just paperwork, contracts, and timing. At 7 I texted Lena Ortiz, a local society columnist I'd met at a charity fundraiser years ago. "If you're near Hibernian tonight, stop by around 7:30, something worth covering." She replied with a winking emoji and, "You never disappoint." By 7:15, the band finished their set and the DJ gave me a thumbs up. The projector hummed softly as it warmed up. The title card was innocent enough. The Whitmore family through the years. Colleen noticed the screen and froze. "What is that?" She hissed at the planner. "Family slideshow," the planner said. "Scheduled in the contract." "I didn't authorize—" "You didn't have to," I cut in, voice calm. "I did." The planner looked from her to me, torn. Then she stepped back. She knew contracts trump charm. Ethan was on stage, thanking guests, oblivious. The chandelier light shimmered off the fake heirloom on Ava's hand. I thought about what it would look like under the next slide. The same ring listed as a rental. The air in that ballroom thickened. Guests leaned toward the screen, forks paused mid-air. I saw Lena slip quietly through the back door, notebook ready. Colleen whispered something to Ava. Ava's eyes went wide. "Turn it off," she mouthed, but I already had my hand on the fader. The projector light hitting my wrist. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the mic, my voice steady, "before we continue, a small presentation to honor the family joining ours tonight." Every head turned toward the screen. In that second, between click and reveal, I felt something quiet and electric, the weight of years, the cost of silence, the exact moment before truth becomes visible. The slide flickered, the room held its breath, and the real wedding, the one they hadn't planned, for was about to begin. The ballroom air changed the moment that first slide hit the wall. You could almost hear fabric tighten, breath stop, champagne fizzing out of sync. On the screen, Uncle Richard grinning beside his fake wife, the two of them dressed in the same outfits they'd worn all weekend. Split beside them, a screenshot of the casting call from Low Country Casting LLC, wedding background, affluent family vibe dates, May 2-3. 2025, Charleston SC day rate, $300. Non-union for one long beat, no one moved. Then a single fork clinked against china. Colleen half rose from her seat. "This is a mistake," she said, voice brittle. "Turn that off. I stayed at the console." "Soon," I told her. "After the family album finishes?" Ava's eyes darted across the room, searching for help. Uncle Richard looked like a deer in headlights, actor instincts failing when there's no script. The next slide appeared before she could breathe. His Turo reservation, 190 Name clearly printed, R. Halverson. The rented Escalade gleamed on screen like a confession. From the crowd, a ripple of whispers. Rented car. Who are these people? What's happening? I let the next image fade in slow, a scanned invoice for $2,800, labeled Family Talent. That word filled the screen, 20 feet wide. The band stopped mid-note. The air smelled of panic and floral perfume. Then the real twist came, not from me, but from them. Uncle Richard stood abruptly, voice cracking through the silence. We were promised cash at wrap. Gasps rolled across the tables. Cameras turned. His wife hissed, "Shut up, Mark!" His real name slipping free like a dropped mask. Ava's face went pale, lips trembling. "Dad, please!" But she didn't have a father in that room. Just a cast. Lena Ortiz, the society columnist, was already scribbling in her notepad. her photographer capturing frame after frame without flash. Colleen charged toward the AV booth. "You're finished, Parker," she spat. "You'll pay for this." The venue manager blocked her path. "Contract says Mr. Parker controls media playback," he said firmly. "Signed by you." The screen changed again, this time the ring. The same cubic zirconia setting from the jeweler's flyer. Price, $340 weekend rental. Someone near the front whispered, "Is that her ring?" Another guest murmured, "He rented her ring." Laughter broke, sharp and cruel, not at me for once, but at them. Ava slammed her bouquet onto the table. You planned this," she shouted. I leaned into the mic. "No, Ava, you planned a wedding around lies." I just turned on the lights. Uncle Richard was shaking now, waving his empty envelope. "We were supposed to get paid at the reception." Lena's pen scratched faster. "Paid actors?" she said aloud. "Fascinating." Behind her, Gabe's camera rolled quietly. He caught every word, every tear, every broken smile. Ethan stood frozen near the head table, disbelief washing across his face. "Dad, what is this?" "It's the truth, son," I said softly. "You deserve to see it before you sign anything." The next slide showed the florist's declined $6,120 payment, time-stamped May 2nd, 8:40 p.m. Then the DJ's unpaid invoice. The paper trail of a fantasy unraveling line by line. Ava's mother tried one last bluff. "You think anyone will believe this?" "You'll look pathetic online," I gestured toward Lena. "She's press. She deals in verification, not opinions." Lena looked up, calm and precise. "We verify everything before print." Colleen went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the mic, steady and clear, "thank you for attending the most honest wedding Charleston's ever seen." A few guests clapped, nervous, polite but real. Then I killed the projector. The ballroom lights rose slowly, revealing faces, half ashamed, half fascinated. The illusion was gone. Ethan walked toward me through the hush. "You knew all this?" "I suspected," I said. "I proved it." He looked at Ava, who had sunk into her chair, mascara streaked. "Is any of it real?" She didn't answer. The DJ unplugged his cables. The band began packing. Guests slipped away like witnesses leaving a courtroom. Outside, the Charleston night buzzed with life. Street music, car horns, laughter from nearby bars. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the ruins of false wealth behind me. As I stepped into the humid air, my phone buzzed again. A text from Darius got confirmation from Florist Plus DJ, both sending unpaid invoices. "Add to evidence stack." I typed back, "Good, we'll file Monday." Ava and her mother stood near the curb under a street lamp, arguing in whispers that weren't quiet enough. "You said no one would find out," Ava cried. Colleen's voice was a hiss. "You should have stuck to the script, then they saw me." Ava froze. Colleen looked like she wanted to speak, then didn't. I walked past without a word. Across the street, Ethan leaned against his truck. He looked younger somehow, hurt, yes, but freed. "You okay, Dad?" he asked quietly. I exhaled. "Better than I've been in years." He nodded toward the venue. "You planned that?" "Not planned, prepared. There's a difference." He smiled just a little. "Mom would have liked the precision. That one hit me in the ribs." "Yeah," I said softly. "She always did." Gabe came out with his camera bag. "I'll back everything up tonight," he said. "Label it, timestamp it, seal the copies. Keep one for yourself," I told him. Truth's worth more than cash these days. We walked toward the parking lot, the three of us, father, son, and friend, under a humid sky that finally felt breathable again. When I got home, I placed the affidavits, invoices, and SD cards on my kitchen table in neat rows. The table that once held my wife's tea mug now held proof of how far lies can travel before they meet the truth. At 11:57 p.m., I sent one text to Marla. "Tomorrow, we file. Fraud plus annulment. Add vendor statements as exhibits." Her reply came instantly, already formatting the packet. "Proud of you, see. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night because tomorrow the world would see what money can't buy. Honor, proof, and peace of mind." And as I drifted off, I thought about Ava's words one last time. Low class. Maybe so, but there's a kind of class you can't fake. And tonight, it stood up in a ballroom and told the truth under chandeliers. Monday, May 6th, Charleston woke to a soft rain that cleaned the streets and made the live oaks look newly minted. I brewed coffee, laid out the stack on my kitchen table. 3 notarized actor affidavits, the 2800 family talent invoice, the 1099 Turo record for R. Halverson, the $340 ring rental slip, the florist's declined $6,420 charge, the DJ's $150 balance, and Gabe's SD card sealed in a tamper envelope with his initials, and slid everything into a hard-sided case. Paperwork isn't romantic. It's rescue. Marla met us at her firm just after 9. The hallway smelled like toner and bad coffee, the honest scent of accountability. She'd already drafted the petition, annulment based on fraud, with an emergency motion to preserve assets and enjoin commingling until the court could hear facts. Ethan signed with a steady hand. I watched his signature bloom like a new roofline on a rebuilt house. "We'll file at the courthouse by noon," Marla said, aligning exhibits with the care of a jeweler. Affidavits as Exhibit A, ring rental as B, Turo and casting listing as C, vendor statements D and E, chain of custody declaration on the media files as F. She looked up at Ethan. "You're asking for the chance to unwind a marriage induced by material misrepresentation. That's not vengeance. That's relief." Darius arrived with fresh additions, screenshots of the casting call cash with the posting date circled, a copy of the hotel's rooming list with cash payments highlighted, and notes from a phone call with the florist confirming the decline time, May 2nd, 8:40 p.m. "Vendors will cooperate," he said. "They like people who pay their bills." By 11:52 a.m., we were at the clerk's window. The clerk, a woman with reading glasses on a chain, glanced at the top page, at Ethan's ringless hand at my case, and gave a small, sympathetic nod. Filing stamps thunked down one after another, the sound of a story becoming record. We left with stamped copies and a tentative hearing date. On the courthouse steps, the rain stopped. Even the humidity felt lighter. Back home, I called Hibernian Hall to settle our ledger. The manager apologized for the abrupt end on Saturday and told me something I hadn't expected. Because the reception ended early, there's an unused bar minimum credit of $3,100. We can issue the refund to the payer on file. I looked at the cancelled check in my folder. My name, my account. "Send it home," I said. Not a windfall, just a right made right. That afternoon, Lena's column went live online, careful as a scalpel, the performance wedding when appearances take vows. No names, no gloating, just the mechanics, rented cars, borrowed rings, paid relatives, and the lesson every vendor and father should learn. Watch the paper trail. She called me before it posted. "You okay with this tone?" she asked. "We're not here to ruin people. We're here to warn them," I thanked her. Truth without spectacle, that's a luxury I could afford. We changed the locks on Ethan's apartment that evening. He held the lease alone. The key felt heavier in his palm than it had on Friday. He brought a single overnight bag to my house. Shirts, a framed photo of his mom, his laptop. "You don't have to say anything," I told him. He didn't. He put the photo on the mantel beside my wife's watch at 5:40 p.m. The jeweler emailed a formal statement confirming the weekend rental terms for the ring setting. Pickup May 2nd. Return May 5th. Fee $340. The last text I got that week was from Lena, column trending again. Readers asking if the father ever spoke publicly. I replied, "No interviews." The story already spoke, and it had. That night the porch light flickered, same bulb since winter. I left it that way. Some flaws, like scars, are reminders. I'd rather see them than pretend they're not there, because pretending, that's what started all this, and honesty, that's what ended it. The courthouse on May 28th smelled of paper, rain, and nerves. The kind of place where truth doesn't shout, it files quietly in duplicate. I wore the same navy blazer I'd worn to Ethan's college graduation. The one Ava once called off the rack. It still fit, and it still told the truth. Ethan sat beside me, no tie, just a pressed white shirt. calm, tired, ready. Across the aisle sat Ava and her mother, or whatever name Colleen was using this week. No cameras, no crowd, just a few benches and a clerk with a polite cough. When the judge entered, everyone rose. She looked like she'd seen 1,000 love stories end and didn't flinch at a single one. Case 2025-1453, she said. Petition for annulment, fraudulent misrepresentation. Marla stood. Your Honor, my client seeks only clarity and closure. The exhibits speak for themselves. They did. She laid them out in order. The $2,800 family talent invoice. The Low Country casting job post with photos. The Turo rental for $1,199. The 340 ring rental. The vendor invoices unpaid. The notarized affidavits from the 3 hired actors. Ava shifted in her seat, whispering to her mother. Colleen's eyes darted around the room, but there were no chandeliers this time, no crowd to convince. Just a court reporter, clicking keys like a metronome of accountability. The judge leafed through the affidavits, pausing at one. So these witnesses were hired to portray family members? Marla nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and were not compensated. They have sworn statements confirming instruction from Mrs. Whitmore. The judge looked over her glasses. Mrs. Whitmore, do you dispute this? Colleen's voice was a whisper. Misunderstanding, Your Honor, just volunteers. Volunteers with day-rate contracts. The judge asked dryly. Silence. Ava tried one more time. Your Honor, I was under stress. We were combining families. Appearances matter in Charleston society. The judge set the papers down and sighed. Appearances don't supersede truth. Marriage entered under deception is no marriage at all. She tapped her pen once. Annulment granted. Temporary order restraining any joint financial accounts pending audit. The gavel came down soft but final. That sound, clean, wooden, certain, felt like closure, slamming shut and opening at the same time. Ava burst into quiet tears. Colleen muttered something about lawyers and defamation. Ethan just breathed out, long and slow, like someone exhaling a decade of confusion. Outside, the clouds broke open to sunlight. We stood on the courthouse steps, papers in hand. Marla smiled. Clean case, she said. Truth travels well when documented. Ethan stared at the horizon. It's over, right? I nodded. Legally, yes. Spiritually, that's up to you. He laughed softly. Guess I'll find that part later. We walked to the truck. On the way, Lena called. I heard, she said. No names, no scandal. Just a note at the end. Integrity wins quietly. Mind if I quote you? I chuckled. As long as you spell it right. That evening, we boxed up the last remnants of the wedding, programs, a cracked champagne flute, and the fake invitation addressed to the Whitmore legacy family. Ethan tossed it into the trash bin. You think they'll try something? He asked. Not against signed affidavits, I said. Papers heavier than pride. Before bed, he handed me something small, a photo from the wedding night printed from Gabe's footage. It showed me standing by the AV booth, calm, steady, the projector light behind me like a halo. Keep it, he said, for when you forget why you did it. I placed it in the safe beside my wife's watch, a symbol of 2 kinds of love, one that built and one that almost broke us. Outside, the crickets sang again. Same rhythm, same porch, same life, just cleaner air. Some victories don't look like fireworks. They look like a father locking his door and knowing every word he spoke that night was true. By July, Charleston had turned thick with heat, the kind that makes even honesty feel heavy. The storm had passed. The papers were filed, stamped, and shelved. Ethan had moved into a small apartment near Shem Creek. Nothing fancy, but his. Sometimes I'd drive by, see him on the balcony with a cup of coffee and a grin that looked like freedom. Life went back to the kind I understood, slow, deliberate, measured by invoices and daylight. I inspected small homes again, crawl spaces, attics, foundations. People would complain about sagging floors or cracked plaster, and I'd smile. Everything honest shows wear, I'd say. The dangerous ones are the walls that look perfect. One Tuesday, I was inspecting a bungalow on America Street when a young couple approached me, both maybe late 20s. You're the slideshow guy, right? The woman asked. I froze. Excuse me.
She laughed.
The father who exposed the fake rich family. That story's all over the forums for vendors. You save people a fortune in scams. The man shook my hand, rough palms, working hands. Our friends almost hired those same planners. You saved them too. I felt my ears go hot. I didn't do it to go viral. Maybe not, she said, but you reminded a lot of us, truth doesn't need makeup. They left, and I stood there under the summer sun, chuckling to myself. Even in a town built on appearances, word travels when it's real. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea sweating rings into the wood. The cicadas screamed, and somewhere a radio played old Otis Redding. The world had moved on, but the lesson lingered. I pulled out my notepad, the same one that once held numbers and invoices, and wrote a few final lines. They called me low class. Maybe that's true, but class isn't what you wear. It's what you can prove. I smiled, tore the page out, and taped it above my desk. Ethan texted later that evening, a photo from a fishing dock. His line cast out, sunset blazing behind him. He stood beside a woman I didn't recognize. Casual clothes, no jewelry, her hand in his. His message read, no rings, no actors. Just me. I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that shakes loose the last bit of tension from your ribs. I typed back, then you finally learned what real looks like. A week later, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in neat cursive. Inside was a check from Hibernian Hall, $300 refund and a note, for the man who kept the lights honest. I pinned it to my corkboard beside the photo of Ethan as a boy, holding the toy hammer I gave him when he turned 5. He'd built his first treehouse with it, nails crooked, boards uneven, but every piece of it real. Sometimes I still think about Ava and her mother, about the way they looked when the lights came up. I don't hate them. Pity, maybe. Because the truth doesn't destroy people, it just refuses to protect their lies. As the sun dipped behind the pines, I looked out over my yard, the same house I'd built nail by nail, paycheck by paycheck. Low class, she'd called me. I ran my hand over the railing I'd sanded myself and whispered, "You're right." Then I smiled. Low class built something you can't rent, and that's the line I'll leave you with. You didn't lose me. You gave me away, and I walked back home with the truth still mine.